This is something that Nebuchadnezzar and then later Daniel saw back in the 6th century BC. It basically is a parade of nations that would trample down Israel, beginning with the Babylonian captivity, going right on through to the second coming of Christ. And so the head of gold would be Babylon, that trampled Israel down from about 605 to 539, and the chest and arms of silver would be Persia from about 539 to 331. Then the belly and thighs of bronze, and that would be Greece, that trampled Israel down from about 330 to 63 BC. And then you have the legs of iron. Legs of iron would represent Rome. Rome came into the land of Israel about 63 BC and pushed Israel out of their homeland about 40 years after the time of Christ. And then there's a big gap in that statue. The feet with the 10 toes mixed with iron and clay, that's never been fulfilled. And that's basically a 10 king, that's what the 10 toes are, confederation that I believe will start in Europe and ultimately subdue the whole earth. That's the future empire of the Antichrist that will be cataclysmically overthrown by the kingdom of Jesus, which is the stone cut without human hands that shatters the base of the statue at the end of the vision in Daniel chapter 2. So the bottom line is I know this is going to sound really profound when I say it, but the toes and the feet are connected to the legs. And so if the legs of iron represent ancient Rome, then the Antichrist empire of the future must arise initially out of the cultural inheritance of ancient Rome and then ultimately subdue the whole earth. So all this talk that we just heard about from James and others, concerning this digital passport, and the World Health Organization is behind it, and ultimately the European Union is behind it. It's not surprising at all to those of us that have studied this prophecy in Daniel chapter 2 for years and years and years. And that's where you get a new world order that ultimately, initially, is Euro-Centric. That's where it comes from in God's word. Every other nation in that statue that we mentioned is a literal nation. You'll notice, Brannon, I gave the times that each of them lived. It's a literal nation that lived for on a specific, era of time. As you look at all of them on a map, you see that all of them had literal land. And so, if that's true, why would it be any different for the 10 toes? Why would it be any different for the stone cut without human hands at the very end of the vision? And so what these guys are doing is they're interpreting the ankles upward through one hermeneutical or interpretive lens, and then they get to the bottom of the statue, which is the part of it that's yet future, and they pretend it's not yet future, and they move to an allegorical, spiritual form of interpretation. They argue that this is some sort of spiritual kingdom that Jesus set up in the first century, when what Jesus did in the first century doesn't fit the details, of that particular statue. So they've bought into a method of interpretation, as smart as they all think they are, where, part of the Bible is literal, other parts of the Bible are non-literal. Because, Brandon, you and me and others, we take the whole Bible literally. What we believe is there's a gap of time in between the ankles and the feet. And we have to do that because we haven't seen this 10 king, 10 toe confederation rise yet. It's developing in Europe, as we talked about earlier. And we've never seen it instantaneously and cataclysmically overthrown by Jesus, which is what will happen at the end of the tribulation period, albeit Revelation 19.
Yeah. Well, you guys can see he's pretty brilliant on this. He's got a PhD. He's got a law degree. He's written a lot of books on this. And again, you ought to do your homework and study what he's putting out, because he backs it all up with scripture and with the history here. Let's go to this Daniel 2:41-43. In that you saw the feet and toes, partly of potter's clay and partly of iron. It will be a divided kingdom, but it will have in it the toughness of iron, inasmuch as you saw the iron mixed with common clay. What does that mean, the mixture of clay and iron? What does that mean, Dr. Wood?
Well, there's a lot of different interpretations on it. My understanding is as you move down in that statue from head to toe, the metals become less valuable. Gold is the most valuable, and then it paves way to silver, and then bronze, and then iron, to the point where you get to the bottom of it, and it's just iron mixed with clay, meaning it's a sort of a foundation that's not laid correctly, and it's just waiting to be overthrown by Jesus himself. And it's showing us that the world system that we're living in is a broken system, it's temporary, and it's yet to be overthrown by Jesus, who will bring in his real kingdom, his eternal kingdom. By the way, if you want a global reset, Jesus is going to bring that in via the stone cut without human hands. What's being developed now is just kind of a, paltry imitation of God's kingdom.
Then it goes on to say, as the toes of the feet were partly of iron, partly of pottery, so some of the kingdom will be strong, and part of it will be brittle. And in that you saw the iron mixed with common clay, they will combine with one another in the seed of men, but they will not adhere to one another, even as iron does not combine with pottery. So it's not going to be a lasting kingdom, is it?
No. Remember, Adolf Hitler told us his kingdom would last 1,000 years. He didn't even get close. The Antichrist is going to get, if I'm understanding my Bible correctly, 42 months or 3.5 years maximum. But that stone cut without human hands is going to last 1,000 years. That's why it grows and grows and grows at the end of that vision until it fills the whole earth. And then even that 1,000 years, the book of Revelation tells us, is going to pave way ultimately to the last 2 chapters in the Bible, which is the eternal state.
So we do believe the kingdom of God is established on earth. We just don't believe that we do it through our works. We believe, as Daniel 2 describes, God brings his kingdom, we don't build it, which is why we are involved in Christian activism, and we believe Christians should be involved, but we're not trying to strive for some theocracy and Christians take over everything. So we do believe that Christians should be involved. We believe that God will have a kingdom. It just won't be built by us and good works and us somehow doing all these great things that set a heaven on earth state that Christ comes back to, which of course is what the progressive social gospel people like Walter Rauschenbusch were teaching, correct?
Yeah, I mean, all of these people, you mentioned Gary DeMar, Gary North. I'll throw in another name. I don't know if I'm allowed to do this. Kirk Cameron. I just heard him speak at a homeschool convention where he told everybody here in Houston to get out there and bring in the kingdom and quit, waiting for the rapture. I mean, all of these people, they're so confused. They think they're bringing in the kingdom without the king, which is an exercise in, total futility, not to mention arrogance. I'm not building any kingdom. I'm praying what the Lord told us to pray, thy kingdom come. And in the interim, before Jesus sets up his kingdom, and it will not be set up with human agency, as the Daniel 2 vision clearly says. God brings his kingdom. In the interim, I'm trying to win citizens of the coming kingdom by preaching the gospel so people can change their inheritance away from this kingdom of man that's mixed with iron and clay and failing. And I want them to transfer their citizenship into a kingdom which cannot be shaken. Hebrews chapter 12, verse 28 talks about that. So I'm out there reaching and teaching. I'm evangelizing and discipling, and I'm winning citizens of the coming kingdom. I'm praying thy kingdom come. As you said before, we are the salt and light of the earth. So I vote in every election, and I try to be a good spiritual influence wherever I go in the secular world. But the truth of the matter is, I should never confuse that with bringing in God's kingdom. God alone is going to bring in that kingdom. By the way, Brandon, I have a whole 400-page book on this. If people are interested, it's called The Coming Kingdom. The subtitle is How Kingdom Now Theology, alters the purpose of the church. So if you're attending, homeschooling conventions where they're talking about bringing in the kingdom, what you're doing is you're putting onto the church a mission that God never gave the church. God never told the church to go out and bring in the kingdom. What he said is, in this interim age in between the ankles and the feet, we're to fulfill the Great Commission by winning citizens of the coming kingdom. So our focus ought to be proclamation and evangelism, and not trying to, always alter the structures of society because we think we're bringing in, the kingdom of God. And of course, social justice theology, social gospel that you mentioned before, Rajan Bush, they have the opposite design on this, where they actually believe that they're going to set up the kingdom of God, and then for 1,000 years, if you can imagine this, and then Jesus is going to come back and find everything in apple pie order. What a total unbiblical and arrogant way to think.
Well, particularly you got John D. Rockefeller saying, I wish you could see the vision as it unfolds before me. I literally see the church leading the way as it should in all movements, literally establishing the kingdom of God on earth. That's John D. Rockefeller and the Rockefeller family and these globalists who are doing all these things, who are not building the kingdom of God. What they're doing is they're building the kingdom of the God of this world that First John calls Satan. And we even have a former communist, Bella Dodd, in the 50s saying, as a former communist, she said, look out, the communists will take all the nice Christian words and hijack them. Don't you want to bring in the kingdom of God? Don't you want to build the kingdom of God? And now you have all these pastors telling their congregations that's what they're to be doing physically here and now. And so they go, okay. And so the communists, under the guise of social justice, open borders, environmentalism, redistribution of wealth, they get them to buy into a communist idea by hijacking words like the kingdom of God, and due to bad eschatology and doctrine and theology by their churches, their own sheep now are buying into communism under the guise of Christianity, which is why I wrote the book, as you know, Marxianity. So we're involved in Christian activism, as you said, because we believe we are to be salt and light. We're to occupy till the Lord returns. We want to be involved in evangelism. We want to use publishing in Christian schools and colleges and seminaries and radio and television. And we want to be able to raise our children according to the admonishment of the Lord. Train up a child the way he should go, and when he's old, he shall not depart from it. Not a guarantee every time, it's a proverb, but we want to be able to carry that out as parents. Well, if we don't get involved and stay involved, the government will become God, and they're going to destroy the church, or try to, but the gates of hell won't prevail. So we're involved for a totally different reason than the people like Kirk Cameron and others. And Kirk has stayed in my home. His sister, Candace, stayed in my wife and I's home and traveled to some of our conferences. Kirk spoke at a lot of our conferences. But somewhere along the way, he got, I think, brainwashed into this and has become very hostile. I've heard him speak now, and he gets kind of hostile toward people that hold to the eschatology that you and I do. And you said you heard him speak at a homeschool conference this weekend in Houston, and seemed to be a little hostile toward this view as well. But if he's so smart about it and so convicted about it, here's what I would say. Come on here and let's have a conversation. Let's have a debate between Dr. Woods and Kirk Cameron. I don't think Dr. Woods will be joined by Kirk Cameron. I don't think Kirk will join him because, frankly, Dr. Woods, he won't say it, but I will. He won quite a few awards at his seminary, a large seminary out of Texas, because he is so good at knowing the Bible and debating and sticking it from the Bible. In fact, one of the leading theologians I interviewed for years and years and years, who passed away, I think it was close to 100, Dr. John Whitcomb. You guys ought to look him up, Dr. John Whitcomb. He used to send stuff. He found out about his ministry, started sending books to him and encouraging him to keep doing what he's doing. Dr. John Whitcomb was one of the foremost Christian writers, speakers, and Bible teachers in modern day Christianity, and he recognized the brilliance that God has given to Dr. Woods. So I invite Kirk to come on, bring your Bible, but you're not going to defend this. Now, I'm not saying that to criticize Kurt, other than to say when we get our eschatology wrong, we can lead to bad theology, and then we have the church being hijacked by globalists, internationalists, statists who want the borders open and try to use all this Jesus would drive Volkswagen Bug and all this other garbage. And it's just setting up the church for being confused. Closing comment?
Well, I just think it's a sad day when people like Kirk Cameron, are lead spokespersons in the area of theology. I mean, what are his credentials? I mean, he was like a childhood, brat, basically, snarky kid on TV. I have no idea how he feels he's qualified, to pontificate about the rapture. His and it's also kind of funny. I heard you laughing there. He was wasn't he in one of the Left Behind movies?
He was
promoting.
in the original Left Behind movie. Absolutely, he was.
And now what he's adopted.
And by the way,
I
Kevin Sarbo's latest version was far better than Kirk. That he was in.
better acting too. But Kirk, he's basically involved with this preterism, which is the idea that the book of Revelation was written in the 60s, which in the realm of New Testament academia is laughable. Nobody believes that. But they believe it was written in the 60s, and it was a prophecy about what happened to the Jews in AD 70. So they don't believe in a future Antichrist. They think the Antichrist or the beast was Nero. Babylon, which we haven't had a chance to talk about tonight, they think was Jerusalem, burning at the hands of Rome in AD 70. So there's a tinge of anti-Semitism in the air, I believe, with their belief system. And they have to radically allegorize the book of Revelation. And then they take the 1,000 years and they stretch it out like an accordion and make it look like we're bringing in the 1,000-year kingdom right now. And then Jesus is going to come back at the end of the 1,000-year kingdom, and the world is going to be an apple pie order. Well, the last time I checked, chapter 19 in Revelation comes before chapter 20. Chapter 19 is the second advent of Christ. Chapter 20 is the 1,000-year reign. To Gary DeMar, Gary North, Kirk Cameron, and all of these misguided people, I would simply say you're never going to have the kingdom until Jesus comes and sets it up. And if you don't believe me, and if you don't believe God's word, just look at your headlines. You're losing the battle. It should be obvious that we are losing the culture war. And that's why we're told to pray, thy kingdom come. Yes, let's act as a restraining influence while we're here, but let's not go through life with sort of a, overly optimistic view of our own importance, thinking we're actually going to do Christ's work for him. We're going to set up Christ's kingdom for him. It's just a fanciful way of thinking, but it plays into the hands of the right and the left politically because they want to fill that word kingdom with their own political definition, whatever it is. That's why they're so down, Brannon, like Kirk Cameron was at this conference on Bible prophecy and the rapture, because the Bible gets in the way of what they want to do.